We are especially glad that we can share this conversation with a wider audience of all the participating members of the SNEA SDC. We will converse in this short time about how do we cause mid-range storage disruption, so to say. For the benefit of the audience, I am Joji. I've been working with Dell EMC for the past 10 years in the mid-range space, solutioning for file solutions. And I have a total experience of around 17 years.
Good. So myself, Vasu, I have total of 15 years of experience in IT industry, and with Dell EMC, I've been working with last 6 years, and I've been part of Dell next generation mid-range product portfolio. Okay, Joji, let's get started. So let me ask you one question. So why do you think, why do we think mid-range is so important?
Great question. If you look at mid-range is simply the fastest and growing segment that we know about. Very competitive to work with. IDC has already very clearly called out that mid-range is the largest and the fastest growing market segment that we have in the storage space.
It's almost 50% market share for IDC.
Exactly. And from a customer point of view, if you look at it, the expectations are very high from one single solution to cover a broad range of use cases like file, block, and possibly object. And there's so much business dynamics in this area that customers expect all these features in one solution while sticking to an optimal price per gigabyte point in a very limited hardware as well as probably smaller software footprint. And this market segment is certainly the right segment where we can cause disruptive innovation. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Yeah.
So Vasu, if we think of redesigning mid-range and bring about disruption, which are the two main themes that we would like to go after?
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about this. So how about moving from dual node controller to scale up and scale out model, right? Which gives a lot of dynamicism in the deployments, the customers.
Absolutely.
Right, and also having a end-to-end NVMe, right? With the same cost per GB in the mid-range. So it is really a disruption in the mid-range, right? And also having a new deployment models like hyper-converged storage, where we can run apps directly on the storage, very near to storage. Also, use the industry standard or popular architecture like microservices with domain-driven design to create composable, reusable software assets. So these are some of the disruptions we could talk about today. So let's go a little bit deeper in these details. So let's start with NVMe. So NVMe is a transport protocol designed specifically between host and flash storage like SSD storage, right? So NVMe really allows to take real benefit of the flash storage performance, right? So because NVMe or fabric, given we have IP fabric or FC fabrics, right? It gives the ability to take the advantage of NVMe higher command count and queue depth to exploit it fully. So, and then, greatly reduces the storage access time and latencies, right? So, for example, how it works NVMe, right? So NVMe have a true IOPS parallelism mechanism. Means that in the same IOP request, you can do multiple calculations. Just like having a multi-core CPU which does each one calculations, right? So similarly, NVMe implements the multiple true parallel IOPS in the same IO request. So which will greatly reduce the data access speeds. So for example, we talk about NVMe SSDs, right, which will provide 300 MB per second throughput. So when compared to SATA SSDs, right, which is like 5x faster than traditional SATA SSD. So which is a real disruption in the mid-range segment.
Absolutely.
Just like having a enterprise performance with the mid-range cost. So this is a real disruption which we can talk about, right? Another one is we talk about the HCI AppsOn model, right? So this is the new deployment model which gives a lot of flexibility to the customers can deploy the applications rapidly, right? So if you talk about any HCI platform, which have majorly four underlying construct. One is the storage virtualization, compute virtualization, networking, and then we have a advanced management capability layer, which have the complete automation, the customer provisioning, automation, self-healing, and then using AML based resource balancing, right? You place the storage or the resources according to your automatically designed based on analytics or the customer or the policy driven based placement we can talk about, right? So all these things completely abstract the underlying hardware resource management. For example, you don't need to customer no need to manage the volumes, underlying fabrics, monitoring, like creating volumes, provisioning, all those traditional SAN or the data center operations is completely abstracted by this virtualized software running on this HCI box. So we can think of running any hypervisor, any virtualized hypervisor like VMware or KVM or Hyper-V, and on top of that, the customer can deploy their own VMs and then running their application directly on the storage. So which gives a lot of flexibility, and also customer can do a policy-driven configuration as we talk about, right? So mission critical application can have different policies saying access high-end storage with high bandwidth network cards or the SSD storage. So they can configure all the policies like that, and then customer can easily provision their applications rapidly. So completely eliminates the operational cost. So this is really a game changer, I would say. And also when we talk about the deployment, also this will bring the consumption. How customer can consume the storage, like a purely storage as a service model, right? Customer will can play can pay only or what they're using for. They don't need to pay upfront all these costs, and reduce the cost drastically, right? So this is also one of the new disruption in the mid range. So also when we can talk about the microservices with domain driven design. This is one of my favorite topic, right? So microservices is very popular these days. Almost most of the software vendors is completely adapting these microservices. So microservices, right, gives a lot of flexibility. Like why? Because the microservices are loosely coupled and cohesive as much as possible to each other. So how do we make microservice more loosely coupled? So domain driven is one of the idea or one of the architecture pattern we could use to make the microservices more loosely coupled or cohesive as much as possible, right? So domain driven design clearly states an application can have a number of domains, and each domain is bounded by its bounded context or the problem which it is solving. And the domain experts can lay or they can create the domain layer or the domain model, and the application experts or the application developers can utilize their domain expertise and build the application logic on top of the domain layer. So this is the very interesting point in domain driven design. So a lot of times application developers struggle with modeling the proper domains, the problem where they solve, right? So this gives opportunity to the domain experts to work on only domain, and then application or the business business people can clearly call out what's the business logic in the business layer, right? And
Absolutely.
also domain driven design clearly defines the uh, how not to impact the other domains, how not to interfere with other domains by clearly calling a layer called anti-corruption layer. So which is nothing but your data transformation layer, so which you to communicate or they transform the data with external consumers. So whenever some domain changes or they get impacted, your domain is protected. So because your domain understand this internally, and the data transform between this domain other domain clear. So that's how you can clearly call out it when something changes, it will get protected. So this is one of the uh, also gives a lot of parallelism. Like teams can work parallelly and then build software, reusable, coexist softwares very easily, and then they can integrate by having a common eventing mechanism or the using the REST endpoints. They can integrate easily, and then also this brings very important point is the serviceability and the upgrades, right?
Yep.
So this also makes things very easy. That's I would say. So these are the some of the disruptions we could talk about. Also, I would like to ask you that what we can do in the software defined space in the mid range.
Very pertinent question, Vasu. You see, over the last decade or so, we have been developing so many solutions in the mid-range space, and we have so many software assets that solve so many storage solutions in so many different scenarios. But they're all tied down to some kind of deployment architecture or a delivery mechanism, like an appliance or tied down to a product. Now, I am thinking, what if we can containerize such solutions, profile it, reduces interfaces to very basic interfaces like REST, cut its security profile, which makes it secure enough to place such software stacks alongside other software stacks and make composable software. And think about a very mature operating system like Linux. Linux has really come a long way in terms of maturity. The kernel is very trusted today and is used industry wide. It also provides such mature process and resource isolation mechanisms like C groups and in-space and capabilities. Um, and if I use these technologies together, containerized assets, and the OS resource and isolation primitives, I can make such a software asset deploy or install over bare metal or on hypervisor. It goes on to say that I can uh, deploy into a scale up architecture, or I can deploy into a scale out architecture like data centers, or I can deploy into small and medium business lean architectures with very quick turnaround times, right? I work exclusively with the NAS team, so when I consider all of these innovation, I consider NAS as my focal point. So when I think NAS as a software asset, this is what comes to me from a disruption point of view. I can I can containerize any and all of my NAS uh, features that I have today throughout midrange into software defined assets and cover them with a very minimal management API, and also build out ecosystem integration tools, for example, with VMware or with OpenStack. And now I have an ecosystem of NAS which can be placed alongside any block stack to very quickly engineer unified solutions. This is what I call disruption in the mid-range space, and especially with software-defined assets and paradigms like you defined, like domain-driven design. I definitely see potential for disruption, and it's not just with mid-range. This is a pattern that can be repeated in any segment, right?
Yeah, enterprise segment as well.
Right. Um from an NAS, Vasu, I was talking from a NAS perspective, right? Um, if I ask you, what specific areas of mid-range storage would you think you would like to see disruption in?
Yeah, so we talk about NVMe, right? So NVMe having into NVMe with the same mid-range price per dollar per gigabit, right? And also having the new deployment models with like HCI,
Right.
and also this definitely calls out, having a seamless migration solution between when we call disruption. So we have to have a customers to have a seamlessly migrate their legacy systems to the new platforms without any hustle or any disruption. So we have a proper migration solution you could think of, and also having a modelized data path which will reduce storage footprint and we can improve the local and remote protection like replication, local snapshots, clones. So with the reduced footprint with the modelized data path, and also using the microservices with containerized and industry standard container orchestration like K8s, drastically improve the deployment, installation, monitoring, scaling, scale up, scale down. All these features will be easily you know orchestrated very easily. So these are some of the disruptions we could immediately think in the block space. Do you think anything in the NAS space?
If I really think about the NAS space today, I would say replication, migration, and file archival use cases is definitely places where I would look for disruption.
Definitely.
Right. Uh, Vasu, now do you see any players in the market who actually support or sport these cool features that we just spoke about?
Yeah, of course. My response will be biased because if you see even a technical standpoint, one could easily say that Dell EMC's Power Store has almost all of these implemented already in the mid-range and the enterprise segment. Because Power Store is both enterprise and mid-range segment. Right? So
Great, great, great.
good, Joji. Nice discussion, and yes, I hope our audience will be enjoyed our discussion.
Thank you for your time, Vasu, and I really hope the audience did enjoy this conversation too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.